My CEO wife's screen name was I Love Bananas. The day she changed it, she even made a point to tag everyone in the company-wide group chat. The employees were baffled. Wasn't the CEO always an iced Americano fan? Since when was she into bananas? That is, until the day I visited her at work, and she spent the entire day calling out, "Banana, banana, I want my banana." Now everyone knew. Their CEO's husband's nickname was Banana. But who would have guessed that just 6 months ago, this Ice Queen CEO had arrogantly declared she would never marry me? She only agreed because I was the man who saved her grandmother's life, and she was caving to her grandma's immense pressure. After the wedding, she made a bet with her grandmother. She would hide her true identity as a wealthy heiress to test my character. If I was genuinely a good person, she would give me a happy life. But if I had fooled her grandma and my kindness was all an act, she would divorce me in 6 months. So, on the day we got our marriage license, we just exchanged numbers for iMessage. She handed me a key to her apartment and then rushed back to her company. The downside of a whirlwind marriage is that when I got to her building, I realized I'd forgotten to ask what floor she was on. When I pulled out my phone to call Chloe, I realized I didn't actually have her number. Thankfully, we had iMessage, so I tried a voice call through the app. At that moment, Chloe was in a meeting. Everyone in the conference room had their phones on silent. She had a strict no personal calls policy during meetings, so hers was on silent as well. But her phone was on the conference table, so she saw the incoming call right away. The problem was, when we'd added each other, Chloe hadn't saved my name. My iMessage ID was Brave Banana, and seeing an unrecognized contact, she didn't hesitate. She picked up her phone, declined the call, and promptly deleted me as a contact. I had no idea about this chain of events. Seeing that Chloe wasn't answering my call, I switched to texting her, "Miss Sterling, I'm at the Grandview Estates, but I don't know which floor you're on." I typed it out, hit send, and only then did I see the notification that we were no longer connected on iMessage. I stared at my phone, stunned for a moment, double-checking that I hadn't messaged the wrong person. After a bit of thought, I decided to call Grandma Sterling instead. "Grandma, I've moved out of my sister's place and I'm at the Grandview Estates, but I don't know which floor Miss Sterling's apartment is on. Do you happen to know?" But Grandma Sterling didn't know either. For the sake of her investigation, Chloe had bought a new apartment and car, and her grandma had only found out about the place at the Grandview Estates after we were married. She hung up with me in a flurry and immediately dialed Chloe. Meanwhile, after deleting me, Chloe had placed her phone back on the table. Less than 3 minutes later, the screen lit up again. Seeing it was her grandmother calling, she had no choice but to answer. "Grandma, I'm in a meeting. Can we talk about this when I get home?" "Chloe, dear, that new apartment of yours at the Grandview Estates. Which building and what floor? Ethan has moved in, but he doesn't know where to go. Didn't you get his iMessage? You need to tell him." Hearing this, it all clicked for Chloe. She suddenly remembered that she had, in fact, gotten married that day. "Grandma, just tell him it's in Building B, 8th floor, apartment 808. "Okay, I'll tell him. You get back to your meeting." After her grandma hung up, Chloe stared at her phone, silent for a moment, before finally sending me a new contact request. I wasn't one to hold a grudge, so I accepted her request. An apology message from her appeared almost instantly. I was easygoing, so I just told her to get back to what she was doing. But then, of all things, she had to ask, "Need any help?" I only had one suitcase. I could manage it myself. Besides, even if I did need help, it's not like she could leave her meeting to come help me. Seeing my message, Chloe immediately replied, "Can't." She was swamped. She had no time to come back and help me move. I sent back a laughing crying emoji, put my phone away, and decided not to bother her at work again. Chloe didn't message again either. We didn't know each other, so there wasn't much to talk about. She just hoped I would keep to myself and not bother her with trivial matters. She didn't have time for that. With that thought, she placed her phone back on the conference table. When Chloe finally looked up, she realized everyone in the room was staring at her. "What are you all looking at? Let's get back to the meeting." Meanwhile, once I knew the floor, I dragged my suitcase up and opened the door to our new home. It was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath apartment with 2 living rooms, a kitchen, and 2 balconies. I figured it had to be at least 2,000 square feet. After looking around, I took the initiative and moved into one of the guest bedrooms. We might have been legally married, but as long as Chloe didn't initiate anything, I certainly wasn't going to. After dragging my suitcase into the room, I went to check out the kitchen. It was spotless, but there wasn't a single pot or pan in sight. The 2 balconies were completely bare as well. It looked like Chloe never ate at home. But now that I was living here, I was definitely going to cook. So, I started by going online and ordering a whole set of kitchen supplies. As for the balconies, I figured I'd wait for Chloe to get home and ask what she wanted to do with them. It was her apartment, after all. I was just the one living here on her dime. Once the kitchen gear was ordered, I checked the time and decided to head back to my shop for a bit. By the time I got back to the Grandview Estates, it was after midnight. I pushed the door open to a pitch-black apartment. I did a quick walkthrough and confirmed Chloe wasn't back yet. At this hour, I figured she was probably staying the night at the office. So, I threw the deadbolt on the front door, grabbed my pajamas from my suitcase, took a hot shower, and crashed for the night. Meanwhile, at the San Francisco Grand Hotel, Chloe was leaving her company headquarters, surrounded by a team of bodyguards. "Miss Sterling, are we heading to the family estate or the Hilltop Villa?" The estate was the Sterling family's ancestral home, while the Hilltop Villa was Chloe's personal mansion where she usually lived, only occasionally visiting the family estate. But tonight, Chloe chose to go to the Grandview Estates. Then she instructed a bodyguard, "That new Ford Transit I bought, make sure you have it brought over." The van was part of her disguise to hide her identity. After a moment's thought, Chloe suddenly turned her head. "By the way, what's my husband's name?" She couldn't be bothered to dig out the marriage certificate, which her grandmother had inspected and hadn't yet returned. "His name is Ethan Hayes, sir. He's 25. You should probably remember that, Miss Sterling." Hearing this, Chloe just gave a casual ahem to show she'd heard. 10 minutes later, the convoy of luxury cars stopped at the entrance to the Grandview Estates. Chloe got behind the wheel of the Ford Transit and drove into the complex alone. She might not remember my name, but she remembered the address of the apartment she'd bought. When she got to the apartment door, she took out her key and put it in the lock. But she quickly discovered that no matter how she turned it, the door wouldn't open. The moment she realized I had thrown the deadbolt, Chloe's expression soured. She had initially been grateful to me for saving her grandmother. But when her grandma constantly sang my praises and pushed for the marriage, that gratitude curdled. She saw me as a calculating social climber, a pretty boy with a hidden agenda. And while she'd ultimately agreed to marry me, she'd made a deal with her grandma. She would hide her identity to vet my character. If I passed her test, we could be a real couple. If I failed, Chloe planned on metaphorically burying me. Now, staring at the locked door, her anger flared. "This is my apartment," she fumed. "I let him stay here, and he locks me out?" With that thought, she started kicking the door, the loud bangs echoing in the hallway. At the same time, she tried calling me on iMessage. Learning from her earlier mistake, she had actually saved my contact info, even adding the label husband. Otherwise, she'd probably forget who I was and delete me all over again. I was jolted awake by the sound of Chloe kicking the door. I'm not a morning person to begin with, let alone when I'm woken up in the middle of the night. I threw back the covers, didn't even glance at my phone, and stormed to the door. "Who the hell is it?" I grumbled as I unlocked the door. Banging on my door in the middle of the night. But when I saw who it was, I froze. It took me a few seconds to recover, then I quickly plastered on a smile. "Miss Sterling, what are you doing here?" Chloe's call hadn't gone through, and she was so furious her eyes were practically red. She couldn't be bothered with me. With a dark expression, she brushed past me and walked straight into the apartment. I scratched my head, a little embarrassed, and got a pair of slippers from the closet. "It was after midnight when I got back. I saw you weren't here and figured you weren't coming home. That's why I locked the deadbolt." Chloe still didn't say a word. She just sat down on the sofa and fixed me with an intense stare. Sent a chill down my spine. I quickly brought the slippers over, placed them at her feet, and started apologizing. "Miss Sterling, I'm sorry. I should have called to ask if you were coming home." Chloe remained silent. Seeing me with my head down, she finally closed her eyes after a long moment. "I did say you didn't have to worry about me, but this is my home. You locked me out, and I'm not happy about it. I'm sorry. Next time I'll call beforehand to ask. If you're not coming home, then I'll lock it. If I'm on a business trip, I'll let you know," she said. "If I don't, assume I'm coming home every night. Don't call. I'm busy, and I don't have time for pointless phone calls." I just said, "Oh, it was her house, so whatever she said went." Then it occurred to me that she'd been working this late and was probably hungry. I kindly asked, "Miss Sterling, would you like a late-night snack?" "I never eat late-night snacks. They make you gain weight." Right, you have a great figure, Miss Sterling," I said. "Well, I'm going to head back to bed." Chloe first grunted an then added, "Good night." I replied in kind, then slowly backed away and carefully closed my bedroom door. She sat on the sofa for another moment before heading to her own master bedroom. The apartment had been a last-minute purchase. Came fully furnished, so it was move-in ready. But because of the rush, her own room was still unpacked and disorganized. Looking at her own bare room, Chloe subconsciously nodded. For the moment, her opinion of me had improved slightly. I hadn't shamelessly demanded to sleep in the same room or insisted she perform any wifely duties. The next day, I was up at my usual 6 a.m. I got dressed, washed up, and as I left my room, I glanced at Chloe's door. It was still shut tight. I wandered into the kitchen, stared at the empty space for a moment, then turned around and left. In the end, I decided to go out and grab some breakfast for both of us. I had no idea what Chloe liked, but I wasn't about to wake her to ask, so I just bought a variety of things. Chloe had gone to bed late, but she was still an early riser. She woke up right after I'd left to get breakfast. Not yet accustomed to having a husband, she had momentarily forgotten I was even there. She walked out in her silk pajamas, planning to get a glass of water, but at that exact moment, I opened the door and walked in. Our eyes met. An instant later, Chloe clutched her chest and bolted back into her room. I was stunned for a second, then my own face flushed red. A few moments later, when Chloe reappeared, she was fully dressed. Her expression was grim, but she couldn't really say anything to me. After all, she was the one who'd forgotten there was a strange man in her apartment, a strange man who happened to be her husband. She was used to living in her mansion, where the entire second floor was her private space in the mornings. The household staff wouldn't dare come up unless she went downstairs first. It was a habit, and today, that habit led to her being seen by this scheming man. We stared at each other, neither of us speaking. Finally, I broke the silence by holding up the bag in my hand. "Miss Sterling, I brought breakfast. Come and eat." Chloe was silent for a moment before walking over. She glanced at the takeout bags and asked coolly, "You don't know how to cook?" "I do, actually, and I'm a pretty good cook. Breakfast from outside, especially from those little street-side places, isn't very sanitary," she said. "You should eat less of it. If you know how to cook, you should just make food at home. It's cleaner and safer." As the heiress to the Sterling fortune, she had never eaten the kind of simple breakfast common to people in San Francisco. I shot back, "Have you even looked at your own kitchen? It's cleaner than your face and just as empty. Even if I were a Michelin star chef, I can't make a gourmet feast without pots, pans, or ingredients." Chloe was rendered speechless. Seeing my opening, I repeated, "So, are you eating?" Her stomach was growling, but to save face, she sat down calmly at the table. "You already bought it. It would be a waste not to eat. I suppose having it once or twice won't kill me." She was just looking for an excuse. I split each of the breakfast items and gave her half, then brought up a plan. When I moved in yesterday and saw the situation, I went ahead and ordered a bunch of kitchen supplies online. Once they arrive, I'll do the grocery shopping and cooking, so you won't have to eat takeout anymore. The apartment is still missing a lot of things. Is it okay if I go ahead and get what we need? At this, Chloe looked up at me for a second before returning to her food. "Since we're married, we're a couple. This is your home too. Decorate it however you like. Just stay out of my room." With her permission, I nodded, planning to place some more orders later. After we finished eating, Chloe took out her wallet and placed a credit card on the table in front of me. She then found a pen and a slip of paper, jotted down the PIN, and handed it to me. "You'll need money for shopping, so you can use this card. I'll transfer money to it every month after I get paid. However, I want you to keep a ledger of everything you buy. I don't care how much you spend, but I want to know where the money is going." When we first got married, I'd asked if she wanted to split expenses, but she refused. Her thinking was that since we were a family, it was fine for her to give me some spending money. She had more money than she could count anyway. But she wasn't going to be a fool. In her mind, I was just a gold digger she had to keep on a leash. I had no idea what she was thinking. I just didn't like her attitude or the way she was handling this. I pushed the card and the slip of paper back across the table to her. "Miss Sterling, you bought the apartment, so I'm already saving on rent by living here. The household expenses can't all fall on you. I'll cover the cost of furnishing the place. Unless it's a major appliance over, say, $2,000, then I'll talk to you about it, and you can contribute what you think is fair." Seeing my reaction, Chloe instantly realized her attitude had wounded my pride. After a moment of silence, she pushed the card and paper back toward me again, her tone a little gentler. "I know you have your own shop, that you're your own boss. And since you said this is our home, we both have a stake in it. How can I let you shoulder all the expenses alone? Just take it. If you don't want to keep a ledger, then don't. And what about what I said about getting you a car? Have you thought about it? I could help with the down payment. With your income, you could easily handle the monthly payments." She hadn't actually investigated my income. She just figured that anyone who could run a bookstore near a major San Francisco high school must be doing okay. But I still shook my head and refused. explaining that my electric scooter was more convenient for commuting. After all, with San Francisco traffic, it's easy to get stuck in rush hour. 2 wheels are often better than 4. Seeing her open her mouth to argue, I cut her off. Let's talk about it later. We just got married and barely know each other. I wouldn't feel right spending so much of your money on a car. Hearing that, Chloe finally relented with a quiet hum. After our little chat, I was ready to head out. But just as I opened the door, she suddenly called my name. She stood up, walked over with the credit card, and offered it to me again, this time with an apology. Ethan, please take the card. My tone earlier was out of line. I'm sorry. I looked at her for a moment, and feeling that her apology was sincere this time, I finally took the card and the slip of paper and tucked them into my pocket. When I got to the shop, my friend Jake was already waiting for me. Ethan, you free tonight? There's this big gala, a real high society thing. I have a +1, want to come along and see how the other half lives. My immediate instinct was to refuse. No thanks. I do okay, but I'm a long way from that high society world. Honestly, I don't want to go either, he said. But my mom begged my aunt to get me an invitation. Each invite comes with a +1, so I thought of you. Come on, man. Just come with me so I can get through it. Jake's family were old San Francisco money, local tycoons with several apartment buildings and half a block of commercial real estate. They were worth tens of millions easily, but they were still a world away from the truly elite families. Hearing him talk, I knew his mom was on his case about getting married again. Ethan, just for tonight, will make an appearance, see the sights. My aunt said a ton of heiresses will be there. We don't have to hit on them, but it'll be an experience. And I'm telling you, the food at these things is incredible. I'm a foodie and so is Jake. So after an hour of him pleading and cajoling, I finally gave in. At 6 that evening, we arrived at the venue, the San Francisco Grand Hotel. Jake's aunt got there before us and hurried over the moment she saw us. Jake, get your invitation out. They check it at the door for registration. Once you're inside, you two should do more looking and less talking. When the time is right, I'll introduce you to some people. As she said this, she lowered her voice and gave us a meaningful wink. The implication was obvious. Jake just sighed. Auntie, they're way out of my league. I'm not going to daydream about that. He added silently to himself, I'm just here for the food and drinks. I stood by and listened without saying a word. I was just his wingman and my goal was also the food. A moment later, Jake made an excuse and dragged me away from his aunt. Once inside, he expertly grabbed 2 plates piled high with food and led me to a secluded corner. We don't know any of these society types. If we try to talk to them, they'll just ignore us. Let's just eat. We're only here to see the sights and check out what a high society party is like. Anyway, your aunt would have a fit if she knew you only came here for the food, I said. Hey, thanks to you, I get to try it too. Just as we were happily eating in our corner, a hush fell over the entire ballroom. Everyone suddenly turned to look at the entrance. I stopped chewing and nudged Jake. Why did everyone go quiet? They're all staring at the door. Who just arrived? I have no idea, Jake said, standing up. I stood up with him. We both craned our necks, trying to see the entrance, but there were too many people in the way. We couldn't see a thing. The gala was hosted by a major business mogul, someone the Sterling family had deep ties with. As the current head of the Sterling family, and with the event being held at her family's own hotel, Chloe's attendance was a given. As Chloe made her entrance, you could hear a ripple of respectful greetings. The most important CEOs went up to greet her directly. She moved through the room like a queen, the center of everyone's attention, completely unaware that her new husband was in a corner. My own view was completely blocked by the crowd. After staring for a while without seeing who the main attraction was, I lost interest. I sat back down and tugged on Jake's sleeve. Forget it, we can't see anything through all these people. Let's just eat. For me, the food was the main event tonight anyway. After entering, Chloe's first stop was to exchange pleasantries with the evening's host. Her personal security detail stood by, their expressions serious, their eyes and ears scanning the room for any potential threats. One of the bodyguards, the tallest of the group, had a clear view over the crowd. As he instinctively scanned the room, he suddenly spotted a figure that looked remarkably like his boss's husband. Chloe may have hidden her true identity from me when we got married, but her personal bodyguards couldn't afford not to know who I was. So, aside from Grandma Sterling, they were the ones most familiar with my face. The bodyguard thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. He blinked and looked again. It really was me. At that moment, I was juggling 2 plates, piling them high with food. Once they were overflowing, I found a table in the corner, sat down, and prepared to dig in. The bodyguard's eye twitched at the sight. After Chloe finished speaking with a few prominent executives, He found an opportune moment to lean in. Miss Sterling, I've spotted Mr. Hayes. Chloe frowned. What is he doing here? I don't know, Miss Sterling. Keep an eye on him, she ordered. Don't let him see me, and find out who he's with and who he talks to. Get pictures, discreetly. In Chloe's mind, I was still a suspected social climber. She assumed I was here to find a wealthy patron and climb the social ladder. Meanwhile, I was quite busy myself, juggling eating, digesting, and now, dealing with Jake's cousin, Summer Shaw. She was 3 years younger than Jake, and the two of them had been close since they were kids. After making the rounds with her parents, she spotted us and came right over. Jake pulled up a chair for her, and I just gave her a friendly smile. At my smile, Summer's face seemed to flush a little. She raised her glass to me. Ethan, you're not drinking? I rarely do, I replied. How about some juice then? I can get you a glass. She started to get up, but I quickly stopped her. No, it's okay. I've eaten so much I don't have room for anything else. Seeing that I was firm, she obediently sat back down. A moment later, clearly a bit bored, she started a conversation. Jake, have you and Ethan just been sitting here all night? My mom was planning to introduce you to some nice girls. Every time she turned around to find you, you were gone. She's stuck talking with the other wives and couldn't get away, so she sent me to find you. Jake, now full and content, just smiled. Summer, Ethan, and I really just came for the food. I'm not interested in the rest. We're both stuffed now, and it's getting late, so we're gonna head out. Just let my aunt know, okay? Hearing this, Summer shot to her feet, her eyes instinctively flicking toward me. Jake, you're leaving already? The party's only half over. It's still early. Your cousin and I have to open the shop tomorrow, I interjected as we both stood up. We can't stay out too late. Summer followed us, persisting. You could always open a little later, you know? She even circled around me, trying her best to convince us to stay a bit longer. But we managed to fend her off with the excuse of having to work. Having failed to convince us to stay, Summer could only walk us out of the hotel. Jake, you didn't drive here? Your mom arranged a car to pick us up earlier, he said. Ethan and I will just grab a cab. Summer, you should head back inside. Tell my aunt we left, and have fun. There were a lot of people milling around the hotel entrance. They gave us a passing glance, but since we were unfamiliar faces, no one approached us. We didn't want to get a ride right in front of the hotel, so we walked down the block to hail a cab. We waved to Summer, who had followed us the whole way. Get back inside. We're off. Summer waved reluctantly, watching until our cab pulled away. She stood there on the sidewalk for a long time before finally turning to go back inside. Near the entrance, she crossed paths with Chloe, who was just leaving. Chloe was, as always, the center of a universe of bodyguards. Seeing her, Summer instinctively stepped aside to make way. But Chloe actually stopped and addressed her politely. Miss Shaw, I was just seeing my cousin off, Summer replied. I'm heading back in now. Chloe just nodded and said nothing more. Once in her car, she directed the driver to the Grandview Estates. But to her surprise, when she got there, I wasn't home yet. Staring at the empty apartment, Chloe sat on the sofa, idly watching TV, waiting for the husband who had left the hotel before her but had yet to return. Her bodyguard had sent the photos of my activities at the gala to her phone. Chloe scrolled through the pictures one by one. He eats like he hasn't had a decent meal in a century, she thought. Just eat, eat, eat. Still, she conceded, him hiding in a corner stuffing his face was better than him prowling the room for prospects. Her eyes then fell on my attire in the photos, and she frowned. I was dressed so casually, not even in a proper suit. Then again, she thought, if he had dared to dress up for an event like this, she probably would have locked him out of the apartment for good. Aside from Summer Shaw, he hadn't spoken to any other women. And Summer was his best friend's cousin. They had probably known each other for years. Finally, Chloe stopped on one photo, her lips pressing into a thin line, her eyes turning icy. Even for a candid shot, the bodyguard's angle had been perfect, capturing the exact moment Summer was stealing a glance at me. Chloe could tell in a single glance that Summer had a crush on me, which meant she had a rival. At the thought, Chloe's hand tightened around her phone. Just then, the lock clicked. Chloe immediately shoved her phone into her pocket, done with the photos. I walked in, and was surprised to see her sitting on the sofa watching TV. Miss Sterling, no late night at the office tonight? Chloe gave a quiet hum. I walked over holding a small plastic takeout container. I bought some stinky tofu. Want some? Chloe looked up and glared at me. You did nothing but eat at the gala, and you're still not full? What a glutton. Seeing her silence, I shook my head with mock regret. It smells strong, but the taste is amazing. The more you eat, the better it gets. The man I admire most used to love it. With that, I sat down next to her and opened the container. As the pungent aroma filled the air, Chloe subtly scooted away. The man you admire most? The face on the $100 bill, I said. Want to try a piece? No, you eat it, she said. And can you please eat it out on the balcony? The smell is too strong. She looked like she was about to be sick, so I quickly grabbed my food and headed out, muttering to myself that wealthy people were probably very particular about things. Out on the balcony, I happily dug in. From inside, Chloe could see my silhouette on the balcony, her expression unreadable, but she didn't say anything. When I finished and came back inside, she immediately asked, "You closed up the shop early tonight?" I wasn't at the shop tonight. A friend had a gala to attend and asked me to go with him. By the way, can I ask you something? I don't know if you can answer. The gala was at the San Francisco Grand Hotel. I heard that hotel is owned by the wealthiest family in the city, and their heiress was there tonight. I heard her last name is also Sterling. You're not related to them, are you? Chloe's expression didn't change. We were probably related 500 years ago, she said dismissively. I breathed a sigh of relief. I knew you weren't connected to them. Hearing my relief, Chloe studied me. You seem happy about that. Why? You don't want me to be related to them? It's late. Let's not daydream. If you were related to the Sterlings, the richest family in San Francisco, would you have married a stranger like me? The Sterlings are on another level. Even if you were a distant relative, I'd feel like I was marrying way up, and things would be awkward. Chloe said nothing, her lips pressed together. I continued on, telling her about my night. I skipped over the parts about the food and focused on describing the grand entrance of the Sterling heiress. People were saying she's always surrounded by bodyguards and doesn't let any young men get near her. Miss Sterling, don't you think for an older woman unmarried at her age, there must be something wrong with her? Or maybe her preferences are different. Chloe was so shocked by my words, she nearly bit her tongue. She glared at me, but to me it just looked like she was surprised by the gossip. I nodded, continuing my analysis. It's highly likely. No wonder she's still single at her age. The world of the rich is something we common folk just don't get. Suppressing the urge to strangle me, Chloe asked coldly, "And how do you know she's an older woman?" She's the head of the Sterling family, not some character in a novel. For an heir to successfully take over a family empire like that, they've got to be at least 35. To a young guy like me, what is that if not older? Chloe opened her mouth, but found she had no rebuttal. After a long pause, she asked coolly, "Are you very interested in her?" "Not at all," I said. "Just some fun gossip about a big-shot CEO." I was about to mention Jake's marriage troubles, but at that, Chloe abruptly stood up. "It's late. I'm going to take a shower." I watched her retreating back, glanced at the now empty sofa, shrugged, and headed to my own room. We're still practically strangers, I thought, barely even talked. I thought girls were supposed to love gossip. Time flew, and soon it was Saturday. The previous evening, Grandma Sterling had called me. She said that since Chloe and I were married, it was time for our families to meet properly. Not just the elders but our siblings and cousins too, so we wouldn't be strangers if we ran into each other. So, I arranged for both families to get together that day, and I'd also made plans with Chloe to go grocery shopping that morning. Which is why, at 6 a.m., Chloe was woken up by a call from me. Chloe, who had a terrible temper when woken up, had to exercise the patience of a saint not to yell at me. Finally, she just rubbed her temples and told me to give her 10 minutes. "Take your time," I said. "I made some fried noodles. You can eat when you come out, and we'll go grocery shopping after." Chloe grunted an okay, but just as she was about to hang up, her eyes shot open. She put the phone back to her ear. "What time did you get up?" "A little after 5, I replied. Chloe didn't say another word and silently ended the call. Meeting the family was a big deal to me, and I was taking it seriously. Seeing my attitude, Chloe's morning grumpiness seemed to vanish. Half an hour later, after a quick breakfast, we headed out to the farmer's market together. 2 hours of careful selection later, we returned with our arms full. We had just pulled into the parking garage of the complex when my phone rang. It was Grandma Sterling. "Ethan, are you two home? We're downstairs." "Grandma, we just got back from the market ourselves. Wait for us downstairs, we'll be right there." "You and Chloe went to the market?" The old woman sounded delighted. She thought my cold, proud granddaughter actually condescended to go to a farmer's market with him. This whole pretending to be poor thing might be good for her, she mused. Let her experience a normal life. Chloe's always so busy with work. She's never done anything like this. "Ethan, you should make her help out more. Don't wear yourself out." I got out of the car, phone pressed to my ear with one hand, and opened the back door with the other. I leaned in, pulled out a small, foldable grocery cart and gestured for Chloe to unfold it. The cart wasn't big enough for all the groceries and fruit I'd bought. I ended up carrying the rest while Chloe pushed the cart. I handed the phone to her. "Grandma, don't worry, I won't overdo it. We're on our way up now." After she hung up, I gestured for her to put the phone back in my pocket. "Let's go," I said. "Your grandma and everyone are waiting downstairs." As we walked side by side, she reminded me, "In front of my family, don't call me Miss Sterling, just call me Chloe." Soon enough, her family saw us approaching. I had bags in both hands, while Chloe pushed the little cart, which was piled high with groceries, drinks, and fruit. Walking side by side, we actually looked like a harmonious couple. Chloe's youngest cousin, who was 15 years her junior and still in school, couldn't help but burst out laughing at the sight. For as long as she could remember, she had been terrified of her stern, strict older cousin. In her mind, Chloe was always this cold, untouchable goddess. She never imagined she'd see the day her cousin looked like a regular person. Seeing her laugh so hard, Grandma Sterling shushed her, but even she couldn't suppress a wide, crinkly smile. Grandma Sterling suddenly thought that this whole charade of Chloe hiding her identity to test my character had its upsides. At least it allowed them to see this different side of her. "Grandma, I can't help it, just let me laugh a little more," the cousin giggled. Her husband should have had her carrying a chicken in one hand, a duck in the other, and a baby strapped to her back. "All right, that's enough," Grandma Sterling said, though still smiling. "All of you remember, do not blow our cover. Ethan doesn't know. And you," she said to her eldest son, "you and your wife will say you don't have pensions, that you just garden at home and sell some plants to make ends meet. Remember what we all agreed on. If you blow it, Chloe will have your heads, and don't come crying to me." The old woman was finding this whole scheme highly entertaining and was now fully committed to helping her granddaughter play poor. Everyone murmured their agreement. They weren't total strangers to me. After all, I had saved their mother's life. Her son and daughter-in-law had been the ones to thank me back then. I quickly reached them, greeted Grandma Sterling, and then nodded a hello to the rest of the family. Once we were all back in the apartment, I got everyone settled, then served them tea, water, and fruit. My sister and her family arrived a little later, and then Chloe and I got busy in the kitchen. The day was filled with lively conversation, and it wasn't until after an early dinner that our families finally departed. After seeing them all off, I walked back inside and collapsed onto the sofa. I let out a groan. "My back is killing me." Chloe didn't say a word. She just quietly started cleaning up. After tidying the living room, she went into the kitchen, put on an apron, and began washing the mountain of dishes in the sink. Chloe doesn't say much, but she's very thoughtful. "Ethan, you'd better treasure her." I remembered my sister's whispered words as I watched Chloe start on the dishes. I lay there for another moment before something occurred to me. I shot up from the sofa and rushed into the kitchen. I was greeted by a sink overflowing with suds. "How much dish soap did you use?" I asked, laughing. Her face flushed with embarrassment. "I accidentally used about half the bottle." Chloe wouldn't look at me, her toes curling awkwardly inside her slippers. "Miss Sterling, why don't you let me take over?" I said, gesturing for her to move. She hesitated for a moment before obediently handing me the apron. She didn't leave, though. She just stood nearby and watched. "Next time, let's just go out to a restaurant," she said. "It's easier." "I'm fine with that," I replied. "I just wanted to make a good impression since our families were meeting for the first time. That's why I cooked at home." After a moment of silence, Chloe suddenly asked, "What did my grandma say to you?" I stopped washing and turned to look at her. Our eyes met and I gave a slight smirk. She asked if we were sleeping in separate rooms. She reminded me we're legally married and told me to be a little bolder, more proactive, and to pounce on you. She also said she hopes to be holding a great-grandchild by next year, and specifically mentioned that if I could give her fraternal twins, she'd give me her entire life savings as a reward. Chloe didn't say anything, but she was thinking, my grandmother's life savings are in the billions. She really values this guy. No wonder he charmed her so completely that she ignored my wishes and nagged me relentlessly to marry him. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that I had shown my true colors. She decided I was after her grandmother's fortune. When I didn't hear a response for a while, I glanced over at her and saw her expression had turned dark. Noticing my gaze, she let out a sharp humph. I was completely baffled by her sudden mood swing. "Miss Sterling, did I say something wrong?" With a stony expression, Chloe turned and walked out of the kitchen, ignoring me completely. I watched her go, muttering to myself, that's just weird. She's the one who asked, and then she gets mad at my answer. Chloe went to her room and didn't come out for a long time. I didn't bother with her. I finished the dishes, cleaned the kitchen, and then went to sit on the new swing chair I'd bought for the balcony. A little while later, I heard footsteps approaching, and soon Chloe appeared on the balcony. When she saw me swinging contentedly with my eyes half closed, her expression tightened even more. She walked right over and thrust 2 pieces of paper at me. I took them with a slight roll of my eyes. It was an agreement in duplicate. She had not only signed it but also affixed a personal seal, making it look very official. I gently pushed the swing as I read the agreement Chloe had drafted. The gist was that since we had no feelings for each other, we would be a couple in name only, and I was not to have any designs on her physically. Furthermore, if we failed to develop feelings for each other within 6 months, we would get a divorce. As compensation, she was willing to sign over the deed to this apartment to me. And a final, emphasized clause. I was forbidden from having any ideas about her grandmother's personal fortune. Aside from the apartment, all the other terms were to my disadvantage. When I had finished reading, Chloe spoke, her voice cold. Ethan, we may be married, but we have no emotional foundation. I think we need to sign an agreement. Don't worry, everything else besides what's written here remains the same. I wasn't angry. In fact, it seemed perfectly normal that she would draft something like this. I never had any intention of going after your grandmother's savings, I said. I have my own 2 hands and my bookstore. I can support myself. In my eyes, your grandmother is just a sweet old lady living on a modest pension. Even with a filial family, an elderly person's savings are finite. I probably have more saved up than she does. The whole point of this whirlwind marriage was to put my sister's mind at ease. I had even asked Chloe if she wanted to split everything when we first got the license, but she had refused. I looked Chloe up and down and offered a compliment. Miss Sterling, you truly hit the genetic lottery. With your looks, if you were number 2, no one would dare claim to be number 1. Her eyes darkened at my words. Before she could respond, I changed my tone, shaking my head with a grin. But you're not a $100 bill, Miss Sterling. Not everyone is going to love you. So don't worry, I won't be falling in love with you. I have no objections to this agreement you've drafted. Give me a pen, I'll sign. I don't have a personal seal, so a thumbprint will have to do. When Chloe wrote this, she must have expected me to get angry, to protest, to say something about a man's pride. She never expected me to be completely unfazed and even compliment her on the agreement. After a moment of stunned silence, she handed me the pen. I stood up, walked over to the balcony railing, and using the ledge as a hard surface, I signed my name on both copies. Then I took the ink pad she offered and added my thumbprint. We each kept one of the 2 copies. I casually folded mine and stuffed it into my pocket. Seeing how casually I treated it, Chloe seemed a bit put out, but she didn't say anything. You've had a long day too. You should get some rest. You too, Miss Sterling, I replied. But I'm not tired yet. I think I'll stay out here and swing for a while. Chloe watched me quietly for a moment before turning to leave. Does he really have no agenda? She wondered. Am I just being paranoid? Otherwise, how could he be so nonchalant, not getting angry or making a scene, but actually smiling about it? With that thought, she grabbed her car keys and headed for the door. Seeing her leave, I called out from the balcony, "Going out, Miss Sterling?" "Something came up," she called back. "Don't wait up for me. Just leave the door unlocked." "Don't worry," I said. "I've never waited up for you before." My words made her stop in her tracks. She stood there, speechless for a second, before continuing out the door. She was on her way to her best friend's place to vent and have a few drinks. She just couldn't stand my attitude. He was the one who should have been humiliated and upset, yet he was completely unfazed. Instead, she was the one who felt all twisted up inside. Is it because this is the first time anyone has ever dismissed me so easily? She thought. I made the terms of that agreement so harsh, and he didn't even blink. He just doesn't care about me at all. I'm this beautiful, and he's never even considered falling for me? My body is this good, and he's really never thought about pouncing? Wait, what am I even complaining about? After a round of self-consolation that involved a lot of alcohol, Chloe was completely wasted. In the end, her bodyguard had to drive her back to the Grandview Estates. Seeing the late hour and the closed apartment door, the bodyguard asked, "Miss Sterling, should I wake Mr. Hayes?" Chloe fumbled in her purse for her keys, instinctively replying, "No need, they were only a couple in name after all. Who knew if I would try to take advantage of her in her drunken state? I'm 30 years old and I haven't even had my first kiss," she grumbled, patting down all her pockets. After a moment of fruitless searching, she sighed. "Go ahead and wake him up." She had just realized she'd left without her keys. Inside, I heard knocking and figured it was Chloe. Quickly got up to open the door. "Hello, I'm her rideshare driver," the bodyguard said. thinking fast. She's had a bit too much to drink, so I brought her up. He then handed a stumbling Chloe, along with her car keys, over to me. I felt her weight sag against me. I closed and relocked the door, then helped the unsteady Chloe inside, a look of distaste on my face. How much did you drink? You reek of alcohol. Chloe didn't say anything, but in her head, she was screaming, I only drank this much because of you. I tossed her keys onto the coffee table and helped her to her bedroom door before letting go. Your agreement was very clear, so I'm not going in. Don't try to take a shower tonight. Wait until morning. You're so drunk right now, I'm afraid you'll drown in the tub. After I closed her door, Chloe stood there for a moment before stumbling toward her bed and collapsing onto it. The next day around noon, she emerged from the bathroom looking refreshed. Thinking back to the previous night, Chloe swore to herself she would never get that drunk again. Thankfully, she had that signed agreement, and thankfully I hadn't tried to take advantage of her. Thinking about it, she decided I was, at least, a man of my word. Her opinion of me improved slightly. She wasn't sure if drafting that agreement had been the right move, but since it was signed, she'd just have to see it through. As these thoughts ran through her head, Chloe realized she was hungry. She left her room, half expecting to find a hot, home-cooked meal waiting for her. Instead, all she found was a note on the dining table from me, saying I'd gone to the shop and that she was on her own for meals. The shop was actually very slow on weekends. I could have kept it closed without losing much business. I went in because it was quiet, and it gave me a peaceful place to work on the handcrafted items for my online store. Before long, Jake showed up, surprised to see me there. I told him I was working on some crafts to make extra money. He told me his mom's nagging about marriage had become unbearable, and he'd come to the shop to hide out. I was about to offer my sympathies, but he immediately launched into his tale of woe. In short, his mom had his aunt set him up on another blind date, this time at a coffee shop tonight. A blind date at a coffee shop at night, he moaned. 1 cup of coffee and we'll be there till dawn. Then his tone shifted, and he grabbed my shoulders. Ethan, you have to come with me tonight. Get lost. Are you crazy? I said. Why would I crash your blind date? What if she ends up liking me instead? Dude, he said, are you seriously having that fantasy right now? As we were bickering, a familiar voice called out from the doorway. Hearing my name, I paused, stopped what I was doing, and went to the front of the shop. Grandma Sterling, what are you doing here? I wanted to have a chat, so I came by. I stopped by your apartment first, but Chloe said you weren't there, so I figured you'd be at the bookstore. By the way, I thought you didn't usually open on weekends. Grandma, I haven't added new items to my online shop in a while, and I'm almost sold out of my current stock. I need to make more. I had given her one of my handcrafted pieces before, and she kept it displayed in the most prominent spot in her living room. Whenever she had guests over who admired it, she would take the opportunity to promote my work. Between her efforts and my regular sales, I was getting a bit overwhelmed with orders. While we were talking, Jake brought Grandma Sterling a glass of water. Thank you, dear, she said. Jake, you're here today too? My mom's driving me crazy about getting married, so I came here to get some peace, he explained. She's always setting me up on these dates. It makes me feel like I'm on a clearance rack. And tonight, she's making me go on another one at a coffee shop. I was just begging Ethan to come with me. Hearing this, the smile on Grandma Sterling's face widened. Oh, I understand your mother completely. I'm having the same headache with my other grandsons. You can't push them to do anything. I asked them to go on dates and not a single one will go. Ethan, why don't you go with him tonight? I was taken aback. Huh? But isn't a blind date a one-on-one thing? What am I supposed to do? Be a third wheel. You can help him size her up, she said. After all, you're an experienced married man now. Jake nodded vigorously, seeing Grandma Sterling as his divine wingman. His only goal was to get through the date, and having a friend there would make it easier to manage the situation. After a bit more persuasion from both of them, I reluctantly agreed. Seeing his mission was accomplished, Jake made an excuse to step out, leaving me alone with Grandma Sterling. As he left, she pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse and handed it to me. What's this, Grandma? A love letter? I teased. You cheeky boy, she chided. It's a list of Chloe's habits and preferences. I thought it might help you two grow closer. Ethan, I know you and Chloe don't have an emotional foundation, but feelings can be cultivated. If you both just let your guards down and try to understand each other, I'm sure you'll find yourselves drawn to one another. I didn't respond, just unfolded the paper and glanced at it. I thought to myself, Chloe already has me on a 6-month divorce plan. Why would I waste time trying to cultivate feelings? I wasn't on guard against her, but she was definitely on guard against me. Chloe just gets a little grumpy when she's woken up, and she's a bit of a neat freak, But other than that, she's wonderful, she said. I paused. Grumpy when she's woken up? Grandma Sterling nodded. Unless she wakes up on her own, whoever wakes her up, whether by phone or by knocking, is in for a bad time. Even I don't dare to do it. I thought about the several times I had called Chloe early in the morning, dragging her out of bed, and she hadn't gotten angry. Was her grandma telling the truth? Or was Chloe just holding back because we were newlyweds? Grandma Sterling waved a hand in front of my face, snapping me out of my thoughts. Ethan, she began, then lowered her voice and gave me a conspiratorial wink. Last night, did you too? I knew what she was getting at. I just smiled and shook my head. Grandma, you don't understand how things are these days. If I tried anything, I wouldn't live to see tomorrow. What's there to be afraid of? You're a legally married couple. If Chloe isn't going to be proactive, then you should be. Grandma wants great-grandchildren. Grandma, and I say this with all due respect, I replied. Looking at your granddaughter's icy expression, I just can't bring myself to make a move. Hearing this, Grandma Sterling opened her mouth, then closed it, then just held up a hand in surrender. Clearly, she thought I had a point. After a moment, she finally managed. Chloe takes after her grandfather. He was a very serious, cold man by nature. When she was young, she had pursued her husband for years, using every trick in the book to win him over. She was about to share some of these stories to inspire me, but my comment about kissing her would be like gnawing on a frozen bone, stopped her in her tracks. Grandma, don't worry about me and Chloe. We'll just let things happen naturally, I said. We're just roommates anyway, I thought. All right, let nature take its course, she said. I'll help you tidy up a bit. You get back to your work. Grandma Sterling was not one to sit still. At home, she was always helping the gardeners with the flowers, and she used to even help tend the fields on the estate grounds. It took repeated pleading from her family to get her to stop. Then she got the idea to work as a janitor at the family company, but the moment she mentioned it, Chloe's face fell so hard that it scared her out of the idea. This wasn't the first time she'd come to the shop to chat. I knew she'd worked hard her whole life and couldn't stand being idle. A little tidying up wouldn't hurt, so I let her help me organize the shelves. As she was dusting a bookshelf with a feather duster, Grandma Sterling discreetly pulled out her phone, took a short video of me working, and sent it to her precious granddaughter. By the time I finished all the custom orders, it was already past 6 in the evening. Jake's blind date was at 7:30, at a place called the Willow Creek Cafe, one of the most elegant coffee houses in the city. A little while later, Jake pulled up on his motorcycle to pick me up. At the same time, Chloe's younger sister, let's call her Claire, arrived to pick up their grandmother. Grandma Sterling had specifically told her to bring a less conspicuous car. The cheapest car in their garage was the BMW the staff used for errands, which was still a 6-figure vehicle. It was too late to buy a beater, so Claire ended up borrowing the family gardener's old pickup truck. Ethan, I'm here to take Grandma home, Claire said, popping into the shop. I nodded and, on an impulse, gave her one of the extra pieces I'd made. It wasn't valuable, but it was pretty, and she accepted it with a smile. As they walked to the truck, Grandma Sterling stared at it with amusement. Where on earth did you dig up this old relic? It's Mr. Henderson's, the gardener, Claire explained. He uses it for hauling fertilizer. I borrowed it so Ethan wouldn't get suspicious. A look of understanding dawned on Grandma's face. She immediately pulled out her phone and called Chloe. Chloe, dear, your grandmother has a sudden craving. Could you go to the Willow Creek Cafe right now and pick me up some of their pastries? Theirs are just the best. Grandma, there are plenty of people at the house who can go for you. Why do I have to run the errand? What's that? Is your grandmother's request too much for you now? I'm telling you, if I don't have pastries from the Willow Creek Cafe tonight, then tomorrow I'm showing up at Sterling Corp to apply for a janitor position. Chloe's face darkened. Ever since her grandfather passed away, her grandmother had been like a wild horse let out of the stable, often dressing down and roaming the city, which is how she'd roamed her way into finding me in the first place. Finally, Chloe agreed through gritted teeth. Satisfied, her grandmother hung up. Claire, however, was confused. Grandma, if you wanted pastries from there, we could have just stopped by on our way home. You didn't have to make Chloe go. Before she could finish, her grandmother cut her off with a sharp, "What do you know?" It was then that Claire instantly understood. Her grandma was setting Chloe up. Meanwhile, I locked up the shop, took the helmet from Jake, put it on, and took the keys to his motorcycle. He hopped on the back, resting his hands on my shoulders. Ethan, if only you were a girl, he sighed. Then my mom would finally get off my back about getting married. What's that supposed to mean? I asked, my hand twitching on the throttle. I scooted forward a bit on the seat and gave him a stern warning before finally starting the engine. When we got to the Willow Creek Cafe, his date was already there. Jake hurried over to apologize for being late. I, meanwhile, played the part of a deaf mute, sitting at the adjacent table, not looking, not listening, and not speaking, just silently enjoying a piece of cake. However, when I overheard her demanding a $1 million dowry, a new car and house, that his entire salary be handed over to her after marriage, that she wasn't considering kids for the time being, and that he also had to buy a separate house for her parents, I couldn't help but shoot a look in her direction. The color drained from Jake's face. He made an excuse to go to the restroom. Once there, he called his aunt and let loose a torrent of complaints. Then he called his mom and told her that if she ever forced him on a date with a stray cat or dog again, he'd become a monk. And besides, he fumed, if you want me to get married, could you at least find me a sane person? Meanwhile, back at the table, I saw that Jake had left his wallet. I decided to move over to his seat to grab it, hoping my presence would be a clear hint for the woman to leave. But as luck would have it, that was the exact moment Chloe walked in. She had a habit of scanning any room she entered, and this time was no different. And what she saw was her husband, sitting at a table, having coffee with a strange woman. Is he cheating on me? She thought. Or did that agreement I made him sign last night convince him he couldn't get anything from me? So now he's already looking for a new sugar mama, just waiting for me to file for divorce? Just as Chloe was about to march over, Jake came back from the restroom. She watched as he said something to the woman, and then the two of us got up and left together. But as we were walking toward the exit, I suddenly stopped in my tracks. Why'd you stop? Jake asked. Don't tell me you actually fell for her. My wife, I said. Jake was still processing those two words when Chloe reached us. She didn't speak, just gave me a sarcastic little smirk. I frowned at her expression, but then it clicked. My friend was on a blind date, I explained. I was just here with him. Chloe still didn't say anything. She sized Jake up for a moment, then finally nodded at me and said, "Get home early." "Okay," I said, then asked, "What are you doing here?" "My grandmother sent me to get pastries. She loves the ones from here." As she said it, realization dawned on Chloe's face. She'd been set up. Her grandmother must have known I'd be here and deliberately sent her on this errand. Her grandma thought that seeing me with another woman would make her jealous. As this thought crossed her mind, I just said, "Oh," an awkward silence fell between us. Finally, I broke the silence. "Well, I'm going to head out. I'll leave the door unlocked for you. See you after you drop off the pastries for your grandma." After our brief exchange, Chloe drove to the Sterling family estate. The moment she walked in, she saw her grandmother watching TV in the living room. She angrily slammed the box of pastries onto the coffee table, stood up straight, and glared. "Grandma, we had a deal. You promised you wouldn't interfere in my life with Ethan after we got married." "I didn't interfere," her grandmother replied, the picture of innocence. Chloe pointed at the pastry boxes. "Grandma, you sent me all the way to the Willow Creek Cafe specifically so I would see Ethan having coffee with another woman, didn't you?" "Grandma, I don't know what jealousy tastes like, and I never will." With that, Chloe turned and stormed out. "It's so late, you're not staying over?" her grandmother called after her. "My husband left the door unlocked for me," Chloe retorted coldly, before slamming the front door behind her. Meanwhile, I was back at the apartment, sitting on the swing on the dark balcony, just staring up at the night sky. I didn't know what Chloe and her grandmother had discussed, but when I connected the dots, her grandma helping Jake convince me to go, I understood exactly why Chloe had shown up at that cafe. But what was her grandmother's goal? To make Chloe misunderstand me? Did she actually want us to make it work, or was she hoping we'd split up after the 6 months were up? Chloe didn't get home until very late. When she arrived, she saw my bedroom door was closed and the apartment was dark, so she assumed I was asleep. After a moment's thought, she sat on the sofa and called her sister, Claire. When Claire answered, her first instinct was to ask if Chloe was okay, but Chloe cut right to the chase. "You knew Grandma was setting me up, didn't you?" "Chloe, what are you talking about? All I know is that Grandma called and asked you to get pastries from the Willow Creek Cafe. She loves their stuff, that's nothing new. Your brother-in-law," Chloe seethed, "happened to be on a blind date at that exact cafe." Claire let out a shocked gasp, completely incredulous. When Chloe didn't respond, she sighed. Okay. So, did you actually see him?" "When I got there, his friend was in the restroom. It was just him and his date sitting together." "Wow, what a coincidence," Claire said. "Even if Grandma sent you there, she couldn't have timed it that perfectly, could she?" Chloe rubbed her aching temples. "Grandma bought the Willow Creek Cafe a few weeks ago. She's the actual owner now. So, you're saying the staff there were watching him, and they timed it so you'd walk in right when his friend was gone. making you think he was looking for a new partner? Chloe, you two are married. It's normal for Grandma to be a little anxious for you. She was just trying to provoke you, to make you jealous. So, were you jealous? I've never known what jealousy tastes like, Chloe stated flatly. Well, maybe you should have Ethan let you taste some jealousy sometime. Grandma adores him, Chloe. I think you're going to fall for him eventually. Aside from his background, he's a great guy. And those wire sculptures he makes are incredible. The little money tree sculpture I'd given her had grown on Claire so much that she decided to take it to her office the next day to put on her desk for good luck. Chloe, meanwhile, was thinking about the video her grandmother had sent her. After a long silence, she snorted. I've made it this far in life without knowing the taste of jealousy, and I don't plan on starting now. You're still awake? My voice made Chloe jump as I walked in from the balcony. At the same time, I could hear Claire's voice from the phone. I was about to go to sleep, but then you called. By the way, what did Ethan have to say about it? Before her sister could finish, Chloe abruptly ended the call. I yawned and offered an explanation. I was sitting out on the balcony and must have dozed off. Your conversation woke me up. It gets cold on the balcony at night. You should be careful not to catch a cold, she said. Thanks for the concern. Well, Miss Sterling, I'm heading to bed. Chloe didn't say anything, just watched me go to my room, wondering if I had overheard her conversation with Claire, and if so, how much. Having this person, this husband, in her space made her feel like she had no privacy left. The next morning at breakfast, we each had a large bowl of noodles, and I had placed a fried egg on top of each one. I brought a bottle of vinegar out from the kitchen, opened it, and started pouring some into my own bowl. I like to add a little vinegar to my noodles, I said casually. The sour taste is really good. Chloe said nothing. Miss Sterling, who was it you were telling last night that you didn't know what jealousy tastes like? Here, try some now. I'll add a little for you. Without waiting for her permission, I poured a dash into her bowl. Chloe stared at me for a long moment before finally picking up her chopsticks. So, I asked, how does it taste? She replied instinctively, sour. That's the taste of jealousy, I said. Now that you've tried it, Miss Sterling, you can't go around telling people you don't know what it tastes like. They'll think you're less worldly than a 3-year-old. After that, I had a busy day at the shop. But on my way home that evening, my electric scooter suddenly died. The battery was fully charged, but it wouldn't move an inch. Just as I was wondering what to do, a car pulled up behind me and the window rolled down. Ethan, it is you. I thought that was you from behind, but I wasn't sure. It was Jake's cousin, Summer Shaw. I greeted her and quickly explained that my scooter had broken down. I was just about to start wheeling it off the road. Seeing this, Summer quickly pulled her car over, got out, and hurried toward me. She gave the scooter a cursory look and shook her head. Ethan, I don't know the first thing about fixing these. I have no idea what's wrong. Why don't I call someone to come pick it up and get it repaired? Just leave it with me. I promise I'll have it back to you tomorrow. Good as new. She was my best friend's cousin, and I'd known her for years. I trusted her. After a moment's thought, I nodded. Seeing me agree, Summer seemed visibly excited. She immediately made a call and gave them our location, and we waited for the tow truck to arrive. At that same moment, across the street, a sharp-eyed driver spotted me waiting at the intersection. While waiting at the red light, she turned to her boss, who was resting with her eyes closed in the back seat. Miss Sterling, I think that's Mr. Hayes over there. At the mention of my name, Chloe's eyes snapped open and she looked ahead. She squinted. The silhouette did look like me, but there was a woman standing next to me. Slow down when we pass, she instructed the driver. I want to confirm if it's him. She pulled out her phone, intending to call me, but then thought better of it and put it away. Soon, the light turned green. Chloe's convoy slowed as it passed, giving her a clear view. It was definitely her husband, Ethan. As for the woman with him, it wasn't until after they had passed that she placed the face. Summer Shaw, her rival. Are Ethan and Summer together, or was this just a chance encounter? Chloe was filled with suspicion, but she remained silent and didn't call me. At the same time, Summer had also noticed the convoy pulling away. One of those cars that just passed is the one the Sterling heiress usually rides in, she commented. The CEO of Sterling Corporation. She was at that gala the other night. I wasn't particularly interested in the topic, and seeing my lack of response, Summer dropped it. Soon, the vehicle she'd called for arrived. It wasn't until the driver got out and addressed her as Miss Shaw that I realized she had called her family's personal driver. Ethan, it's too late now. All the repair shops are probably closed, she said. Our driver, Mr. Roberts, will take the scooter and get it repaired for you tomorrow. He'll drop it off at your shop when it's done. I thanked her sincerely. Seeing her opportunity, She pressed her advantage and offered to give me a ride home. I couldn't have been more grateful. Walking home from here would have taken me all night. When we reached the main gate of the Grandview Estates, I asked Summer to stop. I could walk the rest of the way. She clearly wanted to drive me all the way to my building so she could see where I lived. But a high-end, gated community like this wasn't one you could just drive into. In the end, Summer gave up. She figured she could just ask Jake another time. "Thanks again for tonight," I said as I got out. "It was nothing, you've already thanked me enough," she replied. "If you really want to thank me, you can take me to dinner sometime." I readily agreed, then added without thinking, "Yeah, we should all go out for dinner with Jake sometime." But that wasn't what Summer had in mind. She bit her lip. "Can't it just be the two of us?" "Sure, that's fine," I said, misinterpreting her. "You're afraid Jake will be a pain, right?" Summer just smiled, letting me believe it. We said our goodbyes, and I swiped my key card to enter the complex. Summer didn't roll up her window until I was out of sight. I walked the rest of the way to the apartment, took out my key, and found that the door was deadbolt from the inside. Did Chloe assume I was already home and lock the deadbolt out of habit? I wondered. So what do I do now? Wake her up? Her grandma's warning about waking her echoed in my head. She supposedly gets furious if you wake her up. I checked the time. It was after midnight. This was around the time Chloe usually got home, so she was probably still awake. With that hope, I tried calling her on iMessage. Chloe was, in fact, still awake, and she had locked the deadbolt on purpose. She wasn't entirely sure why she'd done it. All she knew was that seeing me with Summer, seeing how well-matched they looked together, had made her furious. My call rang and rang, but Chloe didn't pick up. It eventually went to voicemail. Less than a minute later, I called again. Took 3 tries before she finally answered. "Miss Sterling, sorry to bother you, but you've locked the deadbolt and I can't get in. Could you please open the door?" There was a pause. Then Chloe's sarcastic voice came through the phone. "I thought you'd be staying at a fancy hotel tonight." I heard the sarcasm in her voice and frowned, completely baffled. But I decided not to engage and simply repeated my request. This time, she just stayed silent. I looked at my phone, which showed the call was still connected. After a moment, I sighed. "Fine, if you want me to stay at a hotel, I will. I have that household credit card you gave me. I'll just go check into the San Francisco Grand and put it on that." That got an immediate reaction. "Wait," she said coldly. A few minutes later, the door opened. She immediately turned and walked away without a word. I came in and locked the deadbolt behind me. Seeing that she was about to disappear into her room, I called out to her. She stopped but didn't turn around. "Miss Sterling, you've been sarcastic and passive-aggressive all night. I'd like to know what I did to offend you. If you have a problem, say it to my face. Let's not let things fester. If you're just going to give me the cold shoulder and lock me out every day, I can just move out. It's your apartment, your rules." At that, she finally turned around and stared at me. "How did you get home tonight?" "What?" I was still confused. She repeated the question, enunciating each word. I said, "Who gave you a ride home?" I was stunned. I had been dropped off at the main gate. How could she possibly know Summer had given me a ride? Did she have spies everywhere? Seeing my silence, Chloe sneered. "Ethan, we signed an agreement. We can be divorced in 6 months. Can't you wait until then to find your next meal ticket? Do you have to be so eager? We are still legally married. You looking for a replacement is cheating. And while I don't like you, and I could never love you, no normal person enjoys being cheated on." Chloe just hated the idea of me and Summer together, especially since she saw Summer as a rival. Her attitude made me laugh out of sheer anger. "Meal ticket, prospect. The way you throw those words around is disgusting. Chloe, are you out of your mind? If you're this delusional, you should go see a doctor and stop staring at me like that. You don't even bother to ask what happened. You just jump to the worst possible conclusion. Are you always this arrogant and presumptuous?" I continued. "My scooter broke down on the way home. I happened to run into Summer, who is my best friend Jake's cousin. I've known her for years, far longer than I've known you. I've practically watched her grow up. Given our friendship, she saw me stranded, pulled over to ask what was wrong, helped me arrange for a tow, and then gave me a ride home. We did nothing wrong, but the way you talk about it, you make it sound like we were having some kind of sordid, secret affair. They say that people with dark hearts see everyone else as dark too. Are you the one with secrets, Miss Sterling? Are you the one cheating, and that's why you're projecting it onto me?" My tirade left Chloe stunned. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She tried to think of a comeback, but found she had nothing to say. "Miss Sterling, if you didn't want to get married, you could have just said so. I never forced you. Did you have to go through with it and then act like I'm some leech who's taken advantage of you? You're the one who wrote that agreement. I didn't argue with a single word of it. You told me to sign and I signed. The fact that you're willing to give me the apartment and a car after the divorce is your business. If you think I'm after your money, then it would be foolish of me not to take what you're offering, wouldn't it? And another thing, who do you think you are? That you're so irresistible I must be plotting to get you? You act like you're some domineering CEO from a novel and I'm the male gold digger. Have you been reading too much fiction? The only reason I agreed to this marriage was to give my sister peace of mind. That's it. That time at the cafe when you saw me with that woman, you thought I was cheating then too, didn't you? Anyone who didn't know better would almost think you were jealous. Don't worry, Chloe managed to say. I don't get jealous. You sure looked like you were just now, I retorted. Now that I'd cleared the air and saw her expression soften, I couldn't resist teasing her. You were practically radiating sourness. The vinegar in my noodles this morning had nothing on you. Chloe's face remained tense, but the tips of her ears turned red. I let out a small chuckle. That did it. Her whole face flushed. I don't even like you, let alone love you. How could I possibly be jealous? As long as you're not cheating on me while we're married, I don't care who you're with. You don't have to keep repeating that you don't like or love me. It's not like I'm madly in love with you either. This marriage is just an arrangement, a partnership. And I'll be honest with you too. The only reason I agreed to this was because I was desperate to move out so my sister would stop fighting with her husband about me. So yes, I had a motive. I wanted a free place to live to save on rent and, more importantly, to give my sister peace of mind. Your apartment is far more attractive to me than you are. Hearing this, Chloe felt a strange conflict. It was easy for her to say she didn't like or love me, but hearing me say the same thing back to her, she found my words stung. After a long pause, she finally softened her tone and apologized. Ethan, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. In the future, I said, if you have a problem with me, just say it. Don't lock me out of my own home. With a personality like yours, you're going to have a lot of fights in any marriage. If you married someone with the same temperament, you'd be divorced within a week. Chloe was silent for a moment, then reminded me, I do have a husband, and his personality is different from mine. Your future husband won't be me, I stated plainly. I meant your next husband, I clarified. I had already resigned myself to following the terms of her agreement. Divorce in 6 months. In a situation like ours, there was no way love could ever blossom. The night passed without further incident. The next morning, when Chloe got up, she found me already busy in the kitchen. She seemed to hesitate for a moment, then took the initiative to say good morning, and even, for the first time ever, asked if I needed any help. No, I'm good, I said. But if you're really bored, you can hang up the laundry and sweep the floors. Chloe froze, clearly thinking I was being presumptuous. But despite her thoughts, she meekly agreed. For a big apartment with just 2 people who were rarely home, the place was already quite clean. Sweeping shouldn't have taken long. And yet, by the time I had breakfast ready for both of us, she still wasn't done. In the end, I had to take over, gently taking the broom from her hands. Chloe opened her mouth as if to protest, but then just stood aside, obediently sneaking glances at my face. She was probably checking to see if I was still angry from the night before. My expression had been grim then, but this morning, my mood had improved, and I was even making breakfast for her. With that thought, she spoke up. I can give you a ride to the shop later. Without looking up, I refused. It's not that far out of the way, she insisted. It's no trouble to drop you off before I head to the office. I have a flexible schedule. I can go in late or leave early whenever I want. She was the CEO of Sterling Corp. She could come and go as she pleased. Besides, she had her own ulterior motive. I was, after all, her husband, and Chloe had no intention of giving other women an opportunity to get close to me. While we were eating, my phone suddenly rang. It was on the table between us, and as it lit up, Chloe glanced over and clearly saw the caller ID. Little Sis Summer. Her grip on her chopsticks tightened for a second before she consciously relaxed it. Her mind, however, started to wander. I wonder what my name is in his contacts. I had already answered the call. Ethan, have you eaten yet? Summer's cheerful voice came through. I can come pick you up for work. I can treat you to breakfast, or you can treat me. I could almost picture her expectant face. I was completely oblivious to her crush. I was just thinking that her family lived on the other side of the city. With the morning rush hour, I didn't want her to drive all that way just to get stuck in traffic. No, that's okay, I said. I'm almost done eating, and my wife is giving me a ride to the shop today. You don't need to come all this way. Summer's hopeful expression fell. My words, my wife is giving me a ride, were like a bucket of cold water. She had completely forgotten I was married now. Ethan was single for so long, and then he suddenly gets married to a total stranger. Why couldn't he have just waited for me? I know I'm still young, but why couldn't it have been me? Unfortunately for her, I had never once considered her in that way. She was just like a little sister to me. "Oh, okay then," she said, her voice losing its cheer. "Well, after your scooter is fixed, I'll have someone drop it off at your shop." She was trying to sound calm, but I could hear the disappointment. "You don't have to be so formal with me, Ethan. I'll let you get back to your breakfast." She hung up before I could reply, afraid she might start crying if the conversation continued. Chloe had been listening to the entire exchange, and when I said the words, "My wife is giving me a ride," the corner of her mouth twitched into a small, involuntary smile. Just as I put my phone down, it rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. I hesitated for a second before answering. "Ethan, it's your older brother," a man's voice said. I frowned. "What brother? My mom only had 2 kids, me and my sister. I don't have a brother." The man on the other end quickly clarified that he was my eldest cousin on my father's side. I racked my brain and vaguely recalled him. But when a relative you haven't heard from in years suddenly calls, it's never good news. Before I could even say anything, he launched into his speech. "Our grandmother is sick. It's liver cancer, but luckily it's early stage. The doctor recommended she be treated at a hospital in the city. Since you and your sister both live in the city, you know how things work there. You need to go get her registered and make the arrangements. We're going to bring her down in a little while so she can be admitted right away. I hear you have to pay a deposit up front, so make sure you take care of that. Even though your parents are gone, you still have a responsibility to your grandparents. You two haven't paid a dime for their support in years. So now that she's sick, you and your sister can cover all her medical bills. Consider it back payment for all the years of support you neglected." I was livid. "I seem to recall you're 11 years older than me," I said, my voice tight. 15 years ago, when my parents died in that car accident, you were 22. You were certainly active enough when it came time for our grandparents to divide up the settlement money. And I also remember that our obligation for their support was settled in a lump sum from that money, wasn't it? You all used the huge chunk of money our grandparents took to build yourselves a new house. That was the money meant for their care, money my parents died for. You enjoyed it, and now you have the nerve to accuse me of not providing support." I hung up, then immediately blocked and deleted the number. I didn't say anything to Chloe about my family drama, and she didn't ask. We finished the rest of our breakfast in silence and then headed downstairs. The team of bodyguards waiting near the entrance saw us coming and immediately tried to look casual, scattering like startled pigeons. Their fleet of black SUVs, however, remained parked at the curb. Noticing a Rolls-Royce among them, I commented, "I knew this was a nice complex, but I didn't expect to see a Rolls-Royce parked here. You'd think someone with that kind of money would be living in a mansion, not an apartment. Maybe it's more convenient for work or for their kids' school." Chloe just grunted and offered, "Maybe they're trying to be low-key." I gave her a sideways glance. Since when is driving a Rolls-Royce considered low-key? In the Ford Transit, I called my sister, Evelyn, to tell her about our grandmother's illness. My sister, being 5 years older, remembered more and held a much deeper grudge. She despised our relatives on both sides of the family. Even without my call, there was no way she would have paid a cent for the medical bills. After I hung up, Chloe asked quietly, "You're not on good terms with your relatives, are you?" I didn't see any reason to lie. "When I was 10, my parents died in a car accident," I told her. "None of our relatives, not from my dad's side or my mom's, wanted to take care of my sister and me. But as soon as the settlement money came through, they all showed up wanting a piece of it. The uncles and cousins had no legal claim, so they pushed my grandparents to the forefront. My dad was the youngest son, and my grandparents never cared for him much. They always favored my uncles. When they saw how large the settlement was, they promised they would never ask my sister or me for a penny for their future care, and in exchange, they took a huge portion of the money. We even signed an agreement. The house my parents had just finished building before they died, my grandparents moved right in, claiming it was theirs now. My sister says the deed is still in our parents' names. She plans to go back and fight for it in court after they're gone. She has no intention of letting our uncles get their hands on it." Hearing this, Chloe immediately said, "When that time comes, if you need any legal help, just let me know. I know a lot of good lawyers." I thanked her, thinking I'd take her up on the offer if I needed it. My grandparents would probably be around for a while yet. By the time it came to a lawsuit, who knew if Chloe and I would even still be married? "And your mother's family didn't step in to help?" "My mom had a tough life," I explained. "She was adopted, passed from home to home, before finally ending up with the people I called my maternal grandparents. Since she wasn't their biological daughter, you couldn't expect much from them. They just felt that they had raised her and she died before they could reap the benefits. So they were at a loss. They took a large chunk of the settlement money too. My sister and I were left with just a fraction of it. No one was looking out for us. They were all just looking out for themselves. If it hadn't been for a local official with a conscience who stepped in, we probably wouldn't have seen a single cent. Remembering it all, I turned to look out the window. 15 years had passed, but I still couldn't let it go. My sister, only 15 at the time, had to arrange our parents' funerals. Afterward, the only thing she could do was get me into a boarding school, just to make sure I had a place to sleep and 3 meals a day, so I wouldn't have to live at the mercy of our relatives. That's how we grew up, just the two of us relying on each other. Those so-called relatives never helped us once, but when my sister was getting married, they showed up in droves, demanding a huge dowry from my brother-in-law, threatening to stop the wedding if he didn't pay. After dropping me off at the shop, Chloe returned to Sterling Corporation. Before she even stepped into her office, she told her secretary to have her executive assistant, Ava, come see her. A few minutes later, Ava knocked on the CEO's office door and walked in. Chloe was already at her desk, engrossed in a file. Seeing Ava enter, she put down her pen and gestured for her to sit. You wanted to see me? Ava asked. Is something urgent? Not urgent, Chloe replied. It's personal. I wanted to talk to you privately. Ava sat down with a smile. You could have just called. Can you investigate something for me? Chloe asked. As if you even have to ask, Ava scoffed playfully. I've lost count of the things I've investigated for you. What's one more? Spill it. You know how my grandmother has been nagging me about marrying the man who saved her life, Chloe began. Yeah, and you actually did it, Ava said. What now? Is she nagging you to divorce him already? Chloe shot her a look, a clear signal to get serious. Okay, I'll stop, Ava said, raising her hands in surrender. So, you're finally getting interested in your husband? You want me to dig into his past? It's not that I'm interested, Chloe said, a little too quickly. It's just, since we're married, I should know these things. Just find out everything you can about his family background. You know, you could just talk to him, Ava suggested gently. Get to know him that way. Ava knew this would be an easy task. She wouldn't even need to tap into her family's extensive resources. A few of her own contacts could get the information in a day. As far as Ava knew, Ethan was just a regular guy with a good heart who'd been in the right place at the right time. Besides, anyone who earned Grandma Sterling's seal of approval had to be a genuinely good person. Ava was willing to bet it wouldn't be long before her old friend was completely smitten. He might be running into some trouble soon, Chloe said, justifying her request. If I know the full story beforehand, I can help him. Hearing this, Ava's interest was piqued. Oh, getting protective already, are we? Whether I'm in love with him or not, he is my husband, Chloe stated firmly. Even if it's only in name, he is my husband, and I have a responsibility to look out for him. You're just fooling yourself, Chloe, Ava said softly. At those words, Chloe's fists clenched, and a deep blush spread across her face. Ava, I'm very busy, she said through gritted teeth, a clear dismissal that ended the conversation. The office fell silent, but Chloe's mind was a whirlwind. Fooling herself? The concept was foreign to her. She had always been decisive, her goals clear, her actions swift. But when it came to Ethan, all her usual composure and logic seemed to evaporate. She paced her office in frustration, unable to shake the image of his gentle smile, the sight of his back as he cooked in the kitchen, or even the infuriatingly charming smirk he wore when he teased her. To banish the man from her thoughts, she took a deep breath and forced her attention back to her work, her usual method for regaining clarity and control. She opened her laptop, and a report on Sterling Corp's 5-year strategic expansion plan filled the screen. Her eyes scanned over sectors like new energy and biotechnology. But then, as if guided by an unseen hand, her gaze settled on a field she had never seriously considered: media and entertainment. And there, on the list of leading companies, one name jumped out, striking her like a bolt of lightning: Banana Pictures. Chloe stared at the word banana, momentarily lost in thought. It was just a coincidence, she told herself. She was choosing them because Banana Pictures was the only studio in recent years with a perfect track record and an astonishingly high return on investment. It was a purely logical, data-driven business decision. But deep down, she knew that the moment she saw the name, the decision had already been made, solid and unshakable. She picked up her intercom, her voice once again cool and decisive. Notify the board. Meeting in 30 minutes. The agenda: Sterling Corp's expansion into the entertainment industry. The decision for Sterling Corp to enter the entertainment industry caused a significant stir among the board members. But as the iron-willed CEO, Chloe overruled all objections, her focus locked on the most mysterious and successful studio in the business, Banana Pictures. The negotiations were unexpectedly tough and strangely personal. The CEO of Banana Pictures, my sister, Evelyn, was an immovable force at the negotiating table. Her terms seemed harsh, demanding a massive upfront investment from Sterling Corp and a surrender of some creative control. Chloe's team was convinced the deal was dead in the water multiple times. Yet, each night as Chloe reviewed the terms, she was astonished to find that behind every seemingly unreasonable demand was a masterstroke of strategy, expertly steering Sterling Corp away from the most common pitfalls of the entertainment industry. "This Evelyn Hayes," Chloe muttered to Ava, her brow furrowed in thought. "Either she's trying to take us for fools or she's protecting us in a very, very strange way." What baffled her even more was my sister's personal attitude toward her. In meetings, Evelyn was all business, sharp and relentless. But in private moments, she would look at Chloe with a scrutinizing gaze, a look of disappointment, as if Chloe weren't a business partner, but a sister-in-law who wasn't quite good enough for her brother. When she returned to the Grandview Estates, her mind full of questions, she was greeted by the aroma of a home-cooked meal. I was in the kitchen, wearing an apron and ladling soup. Seeing her tired expression, I said naturally, "You're back. Perfect timing for dinner. I made your favorite steamed sea bass." Looking at me, so content in my domestic world of cooking and cleaning, Chloe couldn't reconcile this version of me with the formidable Evelyn Hayes at the negotiating table. Occasionally, she would vent to me about her work frustrations, complaining about a script with plot holes or a project with a muddled marketing angle. I would just place more food on her plate and offer my simple advice. "A story needs to be something regular people can understand and connect with," I'd say. Or, "It doesn't matter how famous the actor is. If the character isn't relatable, the audience won't buy it." My words were simple, but they always cut straight to the heart of the matter. These simple truths, I knew, perfectly mirrored the complex logic behind my sister's contract terms. Chloe just chalked it up to an outsider's perspective, never stopping to wonder why a simple bookstore owner had such a deep understanding of the entertainment industry. After weeks of intense back and forth, the deal came down to one final step, the official signing. The signing dinner was scheduled at the revolving restaurant atop the San Francisco Grand Hotel. Chloe had spent weeks preparing for this night. Failure was not an option. But 10 minutes before the dinner was set to begin, she got a call from my sister. "Chloe," Evelyn's voice came through, tinged with apology and a hint of amusement Chloe couldn't quite place. "Something urgent has come up, and I can't make it. But don't worry. Our most important representative is already downstairs. He has the full authority to sign on my behalf, no, on behalf of all of Banana Pictures." The most important representative? Besides Evelyn, the CEO, who could that be? Could it be the legendary, mysterious founder who had never once made a public appearance, whose name was a complete secret? Chloe's suspicions grew, but she calmly expressed her understanding. She touched up her makeup and stood by the door of the private dining room, ready to greet this important person. Meanwhile, I was in the elevator, adjusting the collar of my suit and taking a deep breath. The day had finally arrived. The elevator doors chimed open, and I stepped out. I saw her immediately. She was standing at the entrance to the dining room in a sharp, white pantsuit, looking beautiful and radiant. The moment her eyes landed on me, she froze completely, her usually cool, sharp gaze filled with utter disbelief, as if her brain had just short-circuited. A flicker of amusement crossed my mind, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of calm, of things finally falling into place. I was no longer the gentle, harmless bookstore owner. I was dressed for the occasion, and I knew the look in my eyes was no longer just soft and warm, but held a sharp, commanding presence she had never seen before. I walked up to her and gave her a small smile, a smile that held a knowing, mischievous glint she had never seen before. "Ms. Sterling, sorry to keep you waiting." My voice was still gentle, but I deliberately laced it with a formal, businesslike tone. I watched her stunned expression for a moment, then walked past her without another word and took my seat at the signing table. Under the shocked gazes of the lawyers and her own team, I picked up a pen and signed my name on the thick contract, Ethan Hayes. And there, printed clearly below my signature, was my title, Founder. The world seemed to fall silent. I could feel Chloe's gaze darting from the contract to my face and back again. The husband she shared a home with but kept at arm's length, the man she had bound with a demeaning agreement, was the very industry titan she had been working so hard to partner with. I knew that in that moment the household credit card, the 6-month character test, all of it had just become the biggest joke of her life. After the signing was complete, I dismissed everyone from the room. I walked over to where she was still standing, frozen, and said softly, "My sister handles the public-facing side of things. I prefer a quieter life, reading books and writing stories." The news, of course, couldn't be contained. The blockbuster partnership between Sterling Corp and Banana Pictures, along with the revelation of my true identity, detonated across the business and entertainment worlds. And with that explosion came the relatives I had long since put out of my mind. They swarmed like sharks that had smelled blood in the water. First came the phone calls with outrageous demands, jobs at Banana Pictures, huge sums of compensation. After my sister shut them down, they went straight to the tabloid media, tearfully accusing me of being ungrateful, of abandoning my sick grandmother now that I was successful, painting me as a cold, heartless tycoon. The public outcry was immediate. Chloe looked at the vicious headlines and slander spreading online, then turned to me and asked calmly, "What do you need me to do?" I just shook my head and took her hand. "I'll handle this." I immediately called a press conference. The venue was a blinding sea of camera flashes. I stood at the podium in a suit, but this time Chloe was standing right beside me. Her choice to stand with me that day was a more powerful statement than any PR strategy. I wasn't angry or emotional. I calmly presented the evidence to the press, the original settlement agreement, the proof of my relatives' actions over the years. Finally, I made an announcement. I will not be pressing charges or seeking retribution for the past. Instead, in my parents' name, I am establishing a foundation to support children who have been orphaned by accidents and to combat the spread of misinformation and cyberbullying. The room fell silent. A reporter seized the moment and asked a pointed question. "Mr. Hayes, can you comment on the rumors that your marriage to Ms. Sterling was also just a means for you to climb the social ladder?" Every camera in the room swiveled to Chloe. I felt her hand tighten on my arm. She stepped up beside me, took my arm in hers, and confidently took the microphone. Her eyes were clear and steady as she spoke, her voice ringing through the room. I fell in love with his heart long before I knew his name. And as for that 6-month bet I made, it looks like I'm the one who won. The moment she said those words, it felt as if every flashbulb in the room dimmed. All I could see were her eyes, shining with a love that was brighter than any light. A year later, the movie The Ice Queen and the Banana, based on a screenplay I wrote about our story, was released. It was a massive critical and commercial success, winning numerous awards both domestically and internationally. At the lavish after-party, Chloe and I, as the film's producers and real-life subjects, were the center of attention. She was radiant in an elegant maternity gown, her face glowing with a happiness that made her more beautiful than ever. Just as I raised my glass to toast our success, she tugged lightly on my sleeve, her face suddenly pale. "Ethan," she whispered, I think it's time." My mind went blank. The noise of the party faded away, and my only thought was her. I put down my glass, said a quick "sorry, please excuse us" to the stunned crowd, and then swept her up into my arms. With our bodyguards clearing a path, I ran through the party as if no one else existed. Outside the delivery room, for the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be truly helpless. I, who had faced down corporate giants and never flinched, was now pacing the hallway like a terrified child. When a nurse finally emerged, holding a small bundle and smiling, "Congratulations, Mr. Hayes, you have a beautiful baby girl." The hands that had once made my rivals tremble were now shaking uncontrollably as I reached for my daughter. I carried that tiny, precious life into the recovery room. Chloe was exhausted, but her eyes were brighter than I'd ever seen them. I gently placed our daughter beside her and leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Look," she whispered, "she looks just like you." I took her hand, my heart overflowing as I looked at my wife and daughter. I smiled and said, "Our story finally has its perfect sequel." Outside, the stars shone brightly, but inside the room, it was warm and peaceful. Over the soft cries of our newborn daughter, Chloe and I met each other's gaze and smiled. All the misunderstandings, the tests, and the distance between us had melted away, replaced by a deep and tender love. Our future was just beginning, unfolding before us in the most beautiful way imaginable.